Remain seated, please. Permanecer sentados, por favor.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
Our largest single-theme land expansion ever.
Now we want you to share with us our latest and greatest dream.
Matterhorn Matt presents Matterhorn Mondays.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 125 of Matterhorn Mondays, coming to you live from the Outpost. I am your host, Matterhorn Matt.
And I'm your co-host, Alex the Historian.
And today we are joined by none other. The living legend himself has returned to the show. It's Mr. Jeremy, everybody. Can we get a big round of applause for Jeremy in the chat? Everybody, Jeremy's back.
Thank you.
And we have a great episode planned for you all. A lot of very interesting topics that I suppose you guys will be very interested in discussing. And we want to emphasize this episode. We know there's going to be a lot of great discussions that will end up, springing up between us three. So if you'd like to ask us any questions, if you'd like to voice your opinions on any of the topics that we're talking about, you can go ahead and ring 575-386-5814. Leave a voicemail. We do emphasize that you go ahead and leave voicemails, but you can text in your questions or text in your your opinions. But like I said, we do emphasize the voicemail part because it's nice to hear your guys' voices. But anyways, links to all the social media, all that jazz will be down in the description as always. And if you'd like to be wished a happy birthday live on the stream, you could do so by submitting your name using the Google form down below. Just enter your name, enter the birthday, and it looks like we have one birthday tomorrow, Monday the 2nd, Crazy 8 Wizard's birthday. So happy birthday to Mr. Crazy 8, fellow Discordian. That's
what I was going to say.
Fellow Discordian.
Yeah.
Oh, as well, Saturday the 7th, Michael Eisner's birthday. I don't know if it's like the actual Michael Eisner or if because there's like someone who goes by like
it's
the
probably
username.
It's probably the one who frequents the chat.
Yeah, so I'm assuming, well, either way, happy birthday to Mr. Michael Eisner, whether you're the real one or the fake one. Either or, happy birthday. And like I said, click the link down in the description, submit using the Google form. You don't have to use your real name or submit the year that you were born, just the date, the month, and whatever username you might go by, or if you want to put your first name. But before we get into anything else, you guys, because we do have one voicemail that I'm very excited to get to. It's time for everybody's favorite segment, you guys, Matt Snaps.
A whole wide world of knowledge waits underneath the cap. It's once again time this week for Matterhorn Matt Snaps.
It's time for Matt Snaps, you guys. And I switched it up this week. Last week, not a big fan of the apple-flavored Snapple. But I got the classic, you guys. Kiwi strawberry. This is one of the absolute classics. So very excited to pop this open. And let's do that right now. Oh, wow. That was a pretty good snap. That was a pretty good snap, you guys. If you drilled a hole through the earth, it would take 42 minutes to fall through it. Does that mean like from one end of the earth to the other end of the earth, or just like to the center of the earth?
Yes, Matt.
Or it could even mean if you drilled a hole through the earth, it could mean like a meter down in like...
But did you know that if you did drill a hole through the earth to the other side and you did fall down it, you'd get crushed before you even reach the center?
That is the real fact, you guys. That's way more interesting than this lame 42 minutes. Imagine falling for... I'd like barf and...
Do you know why you'd get crushed even though you're falling through a hole?
Because the gravity of the earth.
Yes.
I ain't no dummy. I know me some physics, Mr. Alex. Oh, he said it's the real deal, Eisner. He'll turn 78 on next Saturday.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. Well, happy birthday.
Wow.
He's old. He's like gets
He
a
is.
senior discount at McDonald's by now, I'm sure.
He's older than I thought he is.
I mean, he does look the age. That's mean, but Mr. Eisner, if you're watching, I'm sorry. It's true, though. All right, well, before we get into any of the topics we have today, let's go ahead and hear out this voicemail. Now, this is a very special voicemail from Mr. Bob Chapek himself, which we're going to be getting into later in the episode. Very great discussion. But anyways, let's go ahead and hear out this voicemail from Mr. Bob Chapek.
Hi, Bob Chapek here. I'm sure you've heard the news. I'm going to Hollywood. I just called in to thank you for all your support over the years. It's just so crazy. One week I'm drunk dialing a nationally syndicated podcast, and less than 2 weeks later, I get promoted. Now I understand that might not be the most conventional way to get a promotion at work, but darn it, it worked for me. I guess there is method to my madness, or madness to my method. Anyway, I'm looking forward to the challenges ahead. And you didn't hear it from me, but the sinking boat on the Jungle Cruise at Walt Disney World might have been my going away gift to the park. It's just a rumor at this point, and if anyone asks, I have a new post, and park issues are no longer of any concern to me. Not Bob Lamo's problemo anymore. And I'll tell you what isn't a rumor. I made it through to Hollywood. Anywho, I'll play myself out. This is Bob the Iceberg Chapstick signing off. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-day, my oh my, what a wonderful day. Plenty of sunshine heads my way. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-day, there's a bluebird on my shoulder.
Wow, Mr. Bob the Iceberg Chapstick.
It's the truth. It's actual. Everything is satisfaction.
Oh my,
No,
but
it's
is it
not.
though?
You know, it was,
I was okay. You
you
tell
know,
me.
if this news, if this voicemail had come like last week, I would have thought it was like super funny. But the fact that he's now the CEO makes it just really bittersweet.
Guys, what if that's actually
I-
Bob Chapek leaving that voicemail? What,
Yeah, what
I
if
mean,
it was?
what if? Wouldn't that
Then
be
I
something?
would be like, hey, you know what? I think he has a great sense of humor, and that
And
But
that
last time he called us, he was drunk.
he's drunk at the
Right.
Rainforest Cafe.
Yeah.
Right.
Do they even sell alcohol at the Rainforest Cafe? I don't think they-
probably
Oh well.
They do.
Well.
you can probably get like
Unfortunately,
a
people drink it. Yeah.
frozen margarita or something.
Oh
I don't know.
God. That sounds horrible. But anyways, thank you, Mr. Bob, the Iceberg Chapstick, for singing that lovely, for serenading us here on the show. Yeah, very excited about that. And if you guys would like to leave more voicemails, like I said, go ahead and ring 575-386-5814. We'll be listening to them live throughout the episode. And you guys can go ahead and call in, leave voicemails while we're not on the air as well. If you're listening at home, maybe on like a Wednesday or a Thursday, any other day, you can always go ahead and ring that number, text it, whatever. But we do prefer voicemails, so just FYI. But before we move on to our main topics, it's time for News from the Peak.
We now present to you News from the Peak.
And for the first bit of News from the Peak, guys, this is a very, very interesting... I guess we should preface this by saying this is one of the weirdest weeks of like Disney history that or I guess like just Disney like in general that I've ever experienced. So we're starting this off right, you guys. First bit of news from the Peak. People Mover crash has happened at the Walt Disney World Resort. Now, I guess it's kind of clickbaity to go ahead and call it like a People Mover crash. I guess there was a collision of sorts, is what some people might call it.
They bumped each other pretty hard.
Yeah, I mean, no one was injured. The ride was closed for, around 40 minutes, but the ride's back up today. But yeah, do you guys have any thoughts on the People Mover collision that happened at the Magic Kingdom this past week?
I do. Unless Jeremy wants to go first.
Go.
Oh.
That was very firm.
Commanding. I like that. All right. So, the thing is this just continues to prove my point that, the People Mover system we had at Disneyland was still better than this one. I mean, yeah, it's cool to say like, oh, this one runs off of magnets, but look what happens when they need to bring it to a stop. It hits another people mover. That's not the way you want to bring a ride vehicle to a stop. Especially since that could hurt someone's back. Like I have a bad back, so that'd hurt my back if that happened. But anyway,
Alex, you better put your back in timeout so it learns its lesson, so it won't be as bad anymore.
The one at Disneyland had rubber tires along the track that kept the vehicles moving. So if they needed to stop that, they just turn off the what do you call them? The electric motors that ran the tires, and that would bring each people mover to a safe stop. And there wasn't a chance that they could collide because
people stopper.
The people stopper.
I'm sorry, that was funny.
Oh, people stopper. Wow. Anyway,
that was good, Avery.
Anyway, the ones at Disneyland, they couldn't really collide like that. Not like the ones at Disney World. And just so you know, when they bring the people mover at Disney World to a stop, not all of them can get started again when they turn the electricity back on, because some of them just don't have enough. There's not enough magnets and power, depending on where they are on the track, to get them moving again. So that's a complication of the one at Walt Disney World.
Mm-hmm. And also, if you've been on it in Disney World when they've had to stop for either someone with special assistance has to get on, it's usually the only reason why they have to stop it. It like glides until it has no more momentum. So
that's kind of scary.
It's no
Holy
wonder.
cow.
Well, it's it's just kind of like. You just come to kind of like a slow, complete stop.
Mm-hmm. There's no break.
Yeah, I don't know, but
I mean, it broke earlier because it collided, but
yeah,
right.
Laugh track.
So yeah. I also don't know how well they maintenance, how often they have taken care to make sure that the system is fully operational and fully safe, and I don't know how often they maintenance the people mover to keep it up to par,
Yeah.
But yes, Disneyland's was a better system, I think.
Well,
and the one at Disneyland could go up hills. This one can't.
That's
I
true.
know.
That's true.
I love how, the Disneyland, when you see it going up and it's like swerving through, it's beautiful. It's wonderful. I wish I could have experienced it, but alas, I did not.
Alas, he was a youngin'.
Yes.
Youngin', alas, was he. All right. Well, anyways, I don't know what that was. That does it for our
young
first...
laugh.
That does it for our first topic, our first bit of news from the peak here today. For our second bit, guys, it just gets worse. The Jungle Cruise boat has sunk in the Magic Kingdom. Now, I'm going to go ahead and read off a quote here from a Disney spokesperson that they offered this quote following the, this very horrific, tragic. No one was hurt, thankfully. No one, died or anything, but it's very tragic. Quote, a boat took on some water really quick. I'll run that by one more time. A boat took on some water. Reedy Creek Fire Department responded immediately to this event. Everyone got out of the boat safely. We worked with guests individually so that they could enjoy the rest of their day at the park. The attraction has reopened. So here, as you can see here, there are these various images. I like this one with this guy right here sort of just like staring down the camera. That's pretty funny. So yeah. As
I heard the boat broke in half and then went into the water, with the back half kind of up and then going straight down.
No, Alex, that's the Titanic you're thinking of.
Oh, I see. Okay. Making sure.
I mean, it's close, but Jeremy, what are your thoughts here on the Jungle Cruise boat sinking at the Magic Kingdom? I've
I
never
don't
seen this
even
happen
know.
before, but yeah.
You know, it actually, the funny thing is that it happened in Disneyland not too long ago. It didn't get nearly as much coverage as this. Alex, do you remember? But it didn't get any coverage at all. I remember I was at the park when it happened, and it was like kind of like the talk of the town. If you went around, everyone was talking about it, but it didn't really get any coverage because I don't know. I guess this was just slightly before like the Disney fan media explosion of like 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
But I really don't know. I've just kind of like every piece of news in all aspects of life. I'm starting, and this is dangerous, by the way, to become like desensitized to it all. So I don't know how it happened. I don't know why it happened, but it happened, and I'm sure it was an inconvenience for all who experienced.
Yeah, imagine walking around Disneyland with like soggy socks and like your shoes are just like wet. That must be like horrible.
Well, that's like a daily thing in Central Florida.
Yeah,
I guess, yeah, that's true.
On my last visit, I was like, oh, come on. I was trying to get my family I have to kind of coax them to do Splash Mountain. And the way that I get them to do it in Florida, I'm like, come on, it's different than Disneyland's. And we only come here, not very often, and we have to do it. So, and it's hot outside, so we go on. I've never gotten more wet in my life.
Oh wow.
On any version of that attraction. And of course, we're full body soaked, and then of course after we exit, there's a ginormous downpour. So yes, we walked around with soggy socks and soggy everything for the rest of the day. So that is a daily occurrence.
Someone said in the chat, this will be a plot point in the upcoming Jungle Cruise movie, guaranteed. I'm willing to bet money that there will be some sort of sequence unrelated to this, but there will be some sort of sequence that pertains to like a boat sinking. But Alex, what are your thoughts here on the Jungle Cruise boat sinking at the Magic Kingdom?
You know what I really want to know is how. I really want to know how it sank. Like when you look at the video, you see like this little door from they use it as part of the bench seating, but it's like obviously a little hatch that they can pull up. So the hatch is open and water's coming out of it. And I want to know, why is that there? What is it for? And why did it sink? Like, it didn't look like, there was like a hull breach, like, there was like a hole that just formed and then it just broke open. It looked like there was a failure of some kind of utility or mechanical system or something, like I just really want to know.
I know that in Disneyland, it was a derailing that happened. It went off the track. So I don't know. I don't know if that would be something similar that happened. I don't know why that would cause something to sink.
Because the one at Walt Disney World, it can't become derailed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's really weird. But the one at Disneyland, it follows like a single rail. So you have like a rail going down the center, and then like a roller coaster, you have this like clamp with a set of rollers on it that get guided on the rail. But if the boat lifts up too much, it'll come right off the rail, which is something that's kind of unavoidable. But the one at Walt Disney World is different. Instead of a rail underneath, they have a dugout trough. So it's like a square trough, and then like it's kind of like It's a Small World at Disneyland. They have the boat at the bottom has a wheel that is horizontal and keeps it in the path. So it's like the only way the one at Walt Disney World could become derailed is like if all of a sudden there was this huge swell of water in the river and it lifted the boat out of the track, which I don't think that can happen there.
Well, if anybody in chat here knows, because I couldn't find a reason for the sinking on any of the articles that I looked to. And by the way, all the articles we refer to will be down in the description. below. So if any of you guys have any ideas on how this might have happened, or if you guys have maybe heard something around the parks, let us know in the chat or in the comments down below. And finally, for our first, God, this picture is just so sad. All these people's poor shoes are just ruined by all that stinky jungle water. But
all that tetanus water.
Oh God, that's disgusting.
It is full of tetanus, just so you know.
Isn't tetanus
but
the
you
one
know
where...
what?
Oh no, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, you notice how in that picture the boat that sank was the one that holds the wheelchairs. So, like, can you imagine if a person in a wheelchair was in that boat as it sank? Like, woo, that would have been scary for them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they might have floated. I don't know.
Do wheelchairs float?
Well, no,
Do they
but
put
I mean,
life
I think
jackets
the person,
on the wheel.
I think the person in the wheelchair would have floated out of the chair.
That's true. That's a good point. But anyways, for our first or for our final
which is bad.
Yeah, I mean,
well, I mean, what's worse? You sink strapped into your wheelchair, or you float out of your wheelchair.
But you can't swim.
Okay, but you can still float.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I just don't want to continue that debate because there's so many other things.
Like a crocodile comes in, like one of the Floridian alligators comes in and eats
exactly.
You. Right. Yeah.
Well, anyways, for our final
that was
bit,
one of the first things in everyone's mind. I bet you.
Worrying about alligators.
Yeah.
Well, it is Florida, so alligators, crocodiles in Florida, but. Anyways, for our final bit of news from the peak, guys, this sort of slipped, I feel like, under a lot of people's radar, at least.
It really did.
Yeah. First,
this would normally be the top story.
Exactly. Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway preview of the ride has been released. This is I think this is the only footage that has been released of the ride other than that very brief test footage that I think we saw a few years ago at D23. I could be wrong. I probably am, but this short footage includes the beginning of the ride and offers a look at the Mickey and Minnie audio animatronics. And I'm not going to be playing it here on stream just because I don't want to get copyrighted by Mickey Mouse. So if you guys are interested in watching it, link will be down in the description below.
10 seconds.
It's really short, yeah, about 10 to 15 seconds.
Wait, but what do you guys mean that it flew under the radar?
As in, because people have talked about it, people have been sharing it, but I mean, there's a lot has been overshadowed by the bigger news of the week, I think. Whereas if none of that had happened, I think most of the conversation would be about the Spaceship Earth concept art that was released and this preview, whereas people are still talking about that.
Art?
Exactly.
Yeah, I just remember that. Did we forget about that for this?
I forgot about it.
That's important. We'll see if we can bring it up. We should look at that. Yeah, that is. I totally forgot about that until this moment. Matt, you're dumb.
Well, yeah, it did, like we said, slipped under a lot of people's radar.
But that's the thing. Yeah, it did. And then people were like, "Oh, wait, this is important." And then people talked about it for a little bit. But I think in the wider conversation, a lot of this has been under the radar a little bit.
Yeah, and like I said, link will be in the description below if you guys would like to watch this. It's a really short, 15-second clip of the beginning, I believe, of the ride. But yeah, very neat look. Jeremy, what are your thoughts here on this first look that we have, or I guess just a preview that we have of Mickey and Minnie's terrible name for a ride?
It's so hard to tell. I mean, they're obviously showing the first 10 seconds of the ride, that it's before anything happens. And when I say anything, I mean anything.
Yeah.
So you kind of see, it's very clear that Goofy, this is going to sound so funny to talk about, seriously. Goofy is engineering the train. And I guess he'll be able to peek out and talk to you, that's with that screen that appears to be on the engine of the train. And
the locomotive of the train, Jeremy.
Okay. Yes. And yeah. And it looks interesting. The only thing I can't stop thinking is like that looks literally like the first turn that the Great Movie Ride used to take.
Uh-huh.
So I can't stop seeing that in my head as well. But yeah, it's kind of too little to really have any thoughts about it, except it kind of is looking like how I was imagining it was going to look like. So we'll see. From what I've heard from people who have been able to experience it, that they say it's cool.
And that's all it really needs to be, is just cool. Alex, what are your thoughts on this very brief preview we've seen of Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway in Hollywood Studios?
This is one of those times where I feel like my criticisms in the past have been unwarranted because it looks kind of cool to me. I mean, some of the things that I criticized, I still think are criticizable, but otherwise, I think it does look pretty cool. So I am actually looking forward to riding it. The only thing I do have to say is, can you imagine when the ride breaks down and the Mickey and Minnie faces, like, let's just say they turn off?
Oh, that's going to be horrible.
Have you seen what they look like?
Do you know, like, is it similar to like Frozen Ever After technology? Where like when those audio animatronics don't work, it's like, wow, this looks like really low budget and awful.
No, what I'm talking about is like Mickey's head is designed in 2 dimensions. His whole
right.
head.
Yeah. Okay.
So he literally has like this nose that comes out this way, and the ears are like right here.
Oh,
and,
okay.
Like, the entire projection takes place on this profile of his head. So if this all goes white, you have this like weird looking outline of his head, and it's flat. It's like 2-dimensional. It's like the weirdest. It's going to be the creepiest looking thing you've ever seen when that goes white.
I have a philosophical question to pose to the group. Wow. And this can be another conversation for another time, but I've been thinking about this. Does a figure count as an audio animatronic if the facial animation is a projection?
I would my instincts would say no, because there's like no moving like parts, like the mouth doesn't move, eyes don't move. So I'd say
but hold on.
Okay.
There you go. I don't know the answer to this. That's why I posed it.
Because if you look at what's their names? Ezra, Gus, and the other ghost, the 3 hitchhiking ghosts. If you look at them, they're animatronics, but their faces don't move.
Right, but here's the thing. Audio animatronic, I feel like it used to have a very specific meaning. It was because there were animatronic figures in the park from 1955, but audio animatronic was specific to, it is a figure that animates in 3 dimensions and speaks as well. So some figures are audio animatronics, some figures are not audio animatronics, I feel like.
But the word audio in audio animatronic doesn't define a speaking animatronic. It defines the method in which the animatronic moves. So it's, you know what I mean? Like it's not called audio because it talks. It's called audio because they use ultrasound to generate the electric signals that allow the figure to move, or at least they used to. Now today it's all digital, but they used ultrasound, which is why it was called audio.
Because I guess it's just because the way that when Walt Disney introduced that, he used a bird as an example, and the talking was key to it being the full the full audio animatronic, as opposed to just because he wasn't calling other animatronic figures that beforehand. It was specifically with the Tiki Room, the whole gimmick being they move, they animate, and they talk.
Well, but the biggest difference between an animatronic and an audio animatronic is that an animatronic is not programmable. So when they had animatronic before in the park, like Jungle Cruise and stuff, you couldn't program those to move. You couldn't choreograph their movements. It wasn't possible. So with audio animatronics, they were able to choreograph the movements of every single animatronic by recording their movements using ultrasound cues on tape. And they play back the tape, which animates the cues.
Got it. Okay. So going back to the original thing posed, does it count? Okay. So, but here's the thing. I don't have an answer for this. I'm not taking a side. I just think it's an interesting thing to consider. Audio animatronic, does it count if the facial animation is something that is rendered and projected onto the figure, or not?
I think what makes an animatronic an audio animatronic, in my opinion, is if its movements are pre-recorded. So, like I'm trying to think of a modern animatronic that doesn't require programmed movements. There's tons of them, but I think, for instance, you ride Monsters Inc. Mike and Sully to the Rescue, right? And there's this one scene where they lose track of the little girl. And so you see Mike, and he's like, they're in the locker room, and Mike is holding his head, and his head's tilting left and right.
Right, yeah.
That's not a programmable movement. That's a machine. It's literally like, well, I don't want to describe the whole thing, but it's designed to make his head constantly tilt left and right, like just a bobbling thing. And that is not an audio animatronic because they didn't program it. They just put a motor in there.
Okay.
And so that's, in my opinion, what the difference between an audio animatronic and just a basic animatronic is.
This is very good. So then by that logic, it's any figure that is programmed, has programmed animation, choreographed animation. So that being said, it wouldn't matter if the facial animation isn't three-dimensional on the figure itself. It can be projected onto the figure.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it can be projected onto the figure. As I think the only thing that counts if it's audio is if they literally programmed the movements of the thing. Yeah.
That was a cool conversation. I thought that would make interesting content.
Nice work, pal.
Podcast.
Wow, that was actually a really good impression. Yeah,
I
well,
do my best.
Great conversation there. Thank you for that, Mr. Jeremy. And that does it for this.
Because you can't ask the good questions.
It's true, you guys. Oh my gosh. But anyways, that does it for this week's news from the Peak. And on that note, thank you all for coming to today's episode. It's been a great one. Just kidding. We do have some main topics that we'd like to get to. First main topic, Tokyo Disneyland closing until March 15th. And then finally, we're going to end off Bob Iger stepping down as the CEO of the Walt Disney Company, being replaced by none other than Mr. Bob Chapek himself. So very excited to get into that. But first, we do have our first topic here, Tokyo Disneyland Resort. And Tokyo Disney Sea, yeah. Well, I said Disney. I think I said Tokyo Disneyland Resort first time, so I felt like that wouldn't imply both. But so Tokyo Disneyland Resort closing until March 15th due to concerns of the coronavirus outbreak happening out on that side of the world. Tokyo joins Hong Kong Disneyland and Shanghai Disneyland in the more recent closures amidst the coronavirus concerns. I'm going to go ahead and run through some numbers that we have here. Shanghai Disneyland has lost around $135 million in its 2-month closure. Hong Kong Disneyland has lost $40 million in its 2-month closure. Now, I feel like they haven't been closed for 2 months yet, so I feel like these numbers are implied projections on, how people would assume how much money these resorts would lose in its tenure, 2-month tenure being closed. So, yeah, very kind of scary as well if you look at it in the context of, I guess, our final topic as well. And not just that, but in the context of how these closures might affect the U.S. parks as well. And that's sort of the discussion we want to get into today. How will these 3 major resort closings affect the U.S. parks, and not even just the closure of the parks, but the virus itself being possibly, spread to Disneyland, spread to Walt Disney World? They might have to end up, it'd probably be rare, but they might have to end up closing both Walt Disney World and Disneyland if the virus gets bad enough. So let's go ahead and start off this discussion here with Mr. Alex, the historian. What are your thoughts here on Tokyo Disneyland Resort closing until March 15th, as well as just the whole context of this? How might this affect the future of the U.S. parks going forward if the virus doesn't, get contained well enough and the parks stay closed?
So, yeah, it's a really, this is a complex conversation because a lot of people think that closing a theme park is like turning off a light switch. You just turn everything off and then come back later and turn everything back on again. And it doesn't work that way, not even close. Theme parks, especially Disney parks, are extremely complicated things. And the way that they operate and the way that they run means that they must be run almost all the time. That's why most Disney parks nowadays run 365 days a year, because it's actually harder to close them on a scheduled day than to just keep them open. So, but without going into the boring details, I'll just say that that it costs them, as you already mentioned, a lot of money. What did you say? 35 million? Was it
135 million for Shanghai?
135 million for Shanghai. To put that in perspective, 135 million is like paying for like a C or D ticket ride construction. So that's like if you were to build, that's like the price of the Buzz Lightyear ride at Shanghai. That's how much that costs. So it's really expensive. And I also wanted to give a little bit of more information about the coronavirus, because there's a lot of like misinformation out there, and I've been doing my research like every day for the past week. Sure. And I'll say why in just a minute. But basically, the coronavirus is a series of diseases, a series of illnesses or infections, if you will. And it's not just like the flu; it's like the flu plus like 5 other things. And so, is it the end of the world kind of illness? No. That's what a lot of people will have it. I went to Jersey Mike's the other day, and the guy behind the counter is trying to convince me it's the end of the world. I'm like, no. But is coronavirus dangerous? Absolutely, it is dangerous because of the way that it affects your body. Your body, if you are elderly or infirm, if you have a weakened immune system, it can definitely kill you very easily. But it can also kill people who their body reacts wrong to the infection. So as you know, when you get sick, your body puts out all these antibodies that go and try to destroy the infection. But in the coronavirus case, you could have too much antibodies in your blood. Your antibodies can also turn against you, and that's what can kill you as well. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So is it dangerous? Yes. Doomsday? No. But anyway, as this pertains to the parks, so there is concern that the coronavirus will spread to the American parks. And the reason is because theme parks in general, especially Disney parks, they have a lot of people coming from all over the world every single day in them. And I was reading the other day about a flight attendant who had come in and out of LAX in Los Angeles, and there's a possibility that person could have spread the virus through LAX. And just so you know, at least 200 people a day go in and out of LAX on their way to and from Disneyland. So there is a chance, it could already have spread at Disneyland, but we won't know for another 2 weeks because the virus often doesn't show any symptoms in 2 weeks. But yes, so Disney may end up closing the American parks as a precaution to make sure that nobody else gets infected, doesn't spread. And this could mean a lot of financial bad news for the company. Because while the company will survive it, it will put this huge dent in their budget. And we may not see any more advancements in terms of like expansions and stuff like that to the parks besides what we've already been told is being expanded.
Yeah, and we've already even touched on that a few weeks ago when we talked about the rumors of the cancellation of the construction of Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway in Disneyland, as well as all the other stuff we talked about.
Oh, yes. And as to why I've done so much research about the coronavirus, because actually I am on hiatus from Disneyland as well. So I actually don't plan to be going back until things kind of clear up and then this news kind of dies down and whatever. Only because I just don't want to get sick. First of all, I don't even like having the regular flu. It just makes me miserable. So why would I want to have the coronavirus? So that's part of the reason. Also because it's one of those things where we still don't know very much about the coronavirus and why exactly it kills people. And that's what makes it so dangerous, is how much we don't know about it. So yeah, I'm on hiatus from Disneyland for the time being.
Yeah, and that's why there was no Alex in the parks this week as well. I feel like we should have said that before.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, we're only 45 minutes in and we're onto the topics. We're going to be out of here in no time.
Yeah, not really. We'll still fill in the time.
We will. Yeah.
Well, Mr. Jeremy, what are your thoughts on this whole situation we've just been discussing?
I don't really know. It makes sense to close the parks in Tokyo and Shanghai and Hong Kong, and I wonder if Paris is next. I think the last resort. I think they are going to try their hardest to make sure that the American parks don't close. Because there may be more of a financial loss if they. There will be more of a financial loss if they have to do that. But we'll see. I mean, if a ton of cases pop up here, then they may have to. But again, I'm trying not to overreact to the whole coronavirus thing. I remember there was a similar hysteria not too long ago with the swine flu.
Yeah.
And it just, that faded away. And I hope that, I think this will too. It's not like it's a new bubonic plague and like thousands of people are dying a day.
Did you guys know people still die of the bubonic plague?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In New Mexico,
Absolutely.
even there were some reports of elderly people dying of the bubonic plague. But anyways,
wait,
sorry for interrupting.
In New
Mexico.
Yeah.
And isn't Matt a boob?
But mind blown. Starting to connect the dots.
Well, the other thing too. So yeah, it's like I was saying. It's not like the coronavirus is like a doomsday thing. It's just another one of those things that it's a pretty serious viral infection, and you might want to not catch it. I actually worked in the parks during the time of the swine flu. And You know what's funny was I don't recall it being as massive an ordeal as this is.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah, because as a cast member, we heard about it like, oh, make sure you wash your hands and don't touch your face and blah, blah, blah with the swine flu. But it wasn't like everybody was in the kind of hysterics that they are over this. And I'm not judging that it's like, oh, because this is way more dangerous. I mean, it might be. But I mean, at the same time, I just think that we all need to keep our heads, and just, what am I trying to say? Keep your head cool. No, cool, whatever. Cool your jets on it. Just treat it like something you just don't want to catch, and just wash your hands and stuff. Disney has even put out, Disneyland has a whole bunch of sanitizer stations out right now. All over the park. They're at every restaurant and sometimes outside of certain rides and things like that. And as a matter of fact, I feel safe enough now that if I really wanted to go to Disneyland today, I could. I don't think, like, I'm not afraid of going there. But I'm just, but I'm just being precautious. Like, I just don't want to get sick. I don't want to go through all of that. I don't even think I have the worst health insurance in the world. It doesn't even cover like a simple like visit to like see like, oh, are you sick? Like, I tried doing that, ended up costing me $200 because I wasn't even covered. I was like, anyway, point is
in the US.
I know I have the worst healthcare, but anyway, so I just don't want to go through all that. That's why I'm being precautious. But yeah, I think everybody just needs to follow basic sanitation rules. Wash your hands before eating. Don't touch your face and stuff after you've touched other objects and whatever. And as a matter of fact, I'm probably going to be carrying around hand sanitizer with me if I do go to the park. Like, if I just go like, oh, I got to ride the Disneyland Railroad, I have to go back to Disneyland. I'll bring some hand sanitizer with me, gas mask, hazmat suit,
Would they let you in if you like came in the hazmat suit?
No, they'd be afraid that you'd be like,
they'd be like, no costumes over the age of
no costume. I could dress up as those alien hazmat guys from Monsters Inc. And then I'll just but it's really like for real, but like I'm trying to avoid the anyway, so
well, I guess it's a very very interesting time. Be sure to wash your hands, like you guys said. Don't touch your eyes, don't touch your nose, don't suck your thumb, you guys. If you are still doing that, stop. Buy a pacifier. Get your fingers out of your mouth. I don't know where, but anyways, it will be very interesting to follow this as well in the future to see how this will be affecting the U.S. parks. Just because, like I previously mentioned a few weeks ago, we touched on the rumor that we heard about all the cancellations of the big projects that were going to be happening at the Disneyland Resort because of the closures of these Chinese parks and the big hit that Disney's taking financially because of those. So I guess now we can maybe sort of transfer this. What's the word I'm trying to look for? We can transition. That's the word I'm looking for. Transition this topic into how you guys think this will affect the U.S. parks financially. Will we be seeing a lot of budget cuts? To maybe some parades, some live entertainment, even maybe some construction that will be happening soon.
Maybe they'll budget cut the Magic Happens parade
Magic Happens. It even right after it started, it's already getting budget cuts. Imagine.
God, I there's a lot of things in the parks that I don't like, but I don't hate them because I think hate is a really strong word for something.
Sure.
But I really do hate Magic Happens. I really think it is the worst thing.
I haven't seen any footage of it so far.
Disney has put out since that Mickey Mouse rap show that I told you about episodes ago. That's still the worst though. But yeah, Magic Happens is like right there for me. I think it is awful. Just
I have
awful.
a hot take about parades in general. in the park. I think they're totally disruptive.
No, that's not a hot
And,
take, at least for me.
Good. I'm glad. I think the way that parades have been anyway for the past 20 years, they've just been loud and disruptive, horrible for crowd flow. It just like whenever we're there and it's like, oh, check your watches. Oh God, we got to get over there before the parade starts or it's going to be a nightmare, and I just, I find them disruptive to the experience of the day.
No, yeah, I 100%. I agree 100%. But let's see, Jeremy, what are your thoughts on how this might these closures of the Chinese parks, Hong Kong, no, Shanghai, no, Tokyo's not in China, so the Chinese parks as well as the Tokyo park. I just had to clarify that because I felt like some people would have thought that I thought that. But I knew that.
Some people named Matterhorn Matt.
Jeremy, what are your thoughts on how these closures and the financial hit that the company's been taking as a whole might affect the future of the U.S. parks construction-wise, as well as new projects wise?
Excuse me, I'm getting over a respiratory.
Getting over
thing.
Corona.
Yeah, getting over the coronavirus.
No, but I did have Modelo's last night, but that's different.
Oh
god. So I'm not. It's a bad. I regret saying it. It wasn't funny. I don't really know much about how the allocation of resources and money works in this huge nation of a company. But there's been sort of a debate, at least on Twitter anyway, about some people who were saying absolutely this is going to affect the American parks. It's going to affect the American employees of the Walt Disney Company. It's especially going to affect the cast members of the American parks. And there's other people going, well, yeah, that's nonsense. It's absolutely not going to affect the American parks. And they explain why their version of the allocation of resources wouldn't affect the American parks. I don't know. I think time will tell, and we'll find out sooner rather than later whether or not it is. I'm kind of lean toward I think it will affect the American parks, just because I don't. Yeah. So we'll see, though. We'll see. I don't really know enough to be able to make a strong prediction and opinion about about that.
I think that it will affect the American parks, at least because of the two China parks. But I think it'll be really in the form of those annoying budget cuts, honestly. That's what I think it will be. Because they can make that money back over the course of a year, but so there is one good thing out of all this like bad news about the coronavirus thing. Because once again, it ties back into this is not a doomsday scenario. And here's why. Disney wouldn't schedule the reopening of the parks if they thought the world was going to end, So there's already a time frame in which they're going to reopen Tokyo Disneyland and the Shanghai park and all that. They already know when they're going to reopen them. So that means that Disney somehow has figured out when the coronavirus thing will kind of settle down.
Did Disney start the coronavirus?
I mean, they could have. But so I mean what? So Tokyo Disneyland reopens on the 15th, right?
Yes.
So they somehow know that that's when it's safe to reopen. That's something a lot of people are missing. How does Disney know that? I mean, I'm not saying that this is like weird, but they know. Like they must have talked to health officials or something.
Oh,
like,
sure.
yeah, like they must like so this is the thing that I look at. I'm sorry. I love this because all you see on the news right now is like doomsday information. But when you look at Disney and their reopening times for the resorts, you're like, oh, so they know something that isn't being told on the news, which is that there's actual information out there as to when the projected fizzling out of this virus thing will go away. And it's there, but it's not on the news. So we'll figure it out.
T. Will made a very good point, specifying that would have been the OLC's decision to, in terms of Tokyo Disneyland, since they're in control of operations of the park. But apparently Disney hasn't put an end date to the closure of the Chinese parks, and that could also be because I'm going off of T. Will, and I trust his.
I trust T. Will.
I trust him.
And OLC as in the Oriental Land Company as well.
Land Company. That's correct. Yeah. And my assumption for that would be because it's more prevalent in China than it is in Japan. But Alex is
I feel like he's Googling.
I'm Googling.
I do trust T. Will with knowledge and analysis of the inner workings of the company.
Any results, Mr. Alex?
I am reading.
Well,
okay, so
I don't know how to fill this gap, you guys. I guess this I don't know, this sort of like closure of the parks and like how it is affecting the American parks sort of brings me like memories of I don't know why it's just like connecting like this in my head, but the way when Disneyland Paris first opened and that did really bad, and then there were a bunch of budget cuts in the US parks, I feel like this for some reason, when it comes to like the budget cuts and the loss of money from the company, sort of just ties together in my brain like that. So I guess that's just one connection that I've made, at least.
Yeah. I mean, once Alex finds out this information, I'm ready to move on to the next.
So am I.
There's only so much we. Yeah.
So, okay, so yeah, I don't see any information on the reopening of those two parks. But I must have read the reopening of Tokyo and for some reason connected it to the company and not just the Oriental Land Company.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I guess it is doomsday. So
buy your bottled water, you guys. Go someone said like punching babies for like rice. I think T. Will said that in the chat. Something about punching babies. That resonated with me, T. Will. Thank you for that. But for our fun, I guess, that wraps up for this first topic that we have, the closure of Tokyo Disneyland and how the closure of the Chinese parks will affect the U.S. parks. Moving on from that, guys, did you know? I don't know how to transition into this topic. I feel like everybody knows. I was trying to think of something funny, but yeah, I already said this at the beginning.
Funny about your life, Matt.
Oh my gosh, where's my bruh sound effect? Bruh. I already said this when we started the stream, but an alternate title for this episode is Another Bob Bites the Dust, which, didn't resonate well with you guys the first time, but the second time I feel like would land a lot better. But in case you guys have been living under a rock this past week, Bob Iger has stepped down as CEO of the Walt Disney Company and has named Bob Chapek the new CEO of the Walt Disney Company, effective immediately. Big news, you guys, in case you didn't know. Everybody on Twitter, everybody on social media was ablaze about this whole news that dropped, because it was dropped very unconventionally, I feel like. I remember I was at work. It was Tuesday. It was like 2 o'clock, and I see like notifications on my phone, and I see this notification, Bob Chapek replaces Bob Iger as CEO. I see that in the Discord, and I feel like it was like one of those joke, like the Onion sites that someone would like send. and I didn't believe it for like the first few minutes until I read closer into it. But this is real, you guys. Bob Iger steps down as CEO, Bob Chapek, to take over as CEO of the Walt Disney Company. And I'm sure we're going to be getting into a very great discussion about this. But for those of you guys, you never know. It could be a few minutes long, but
could be boring.
It could be boring. But I feel like we should just recap for those of you guys who don't know who Bob Chapek is. I'm sure everybody knows who he is, but for that one person, I feel like we should preface this.
For the first time viewer.
Exactly. Great episode to join, by the way. Bob Chapek, who formerly served as the chairman of the Disney Parks Experiences and Products. So that was his job before. Just on Monday, that was his job. And now the next day, he's the CEO of the company. So we're going to be getting into some quotes and some more information. But just first reactions from you guys. Alex, what was your first reaction when you read this headline, when you found out this story was real? Because, we should preface this by saying Bob Chapek, not a fan on this show. I feel like everybody who watches this show, everybody in the Disney fan community,
give him a hard time.
Yeah,
we give everybody him a very hard time on this program.
Everybody can disagree on whether or not they like Magic Happens, but everybody can agree that Bob Chapek is not the greatest when it comes to creativity and running the parks. But Alex, what were your what were your initial thoughts when you read this headline?
So I was at work at my cafe, and then Matt, Steve, my friend Steve. You remember Steve, right?
I do.
Okay, I need you to say something audio because I don't
Sorry,
see it.
my mic was muted.
Okay. Oh, what a weirdo. Anyway, so Steve is up in the ceiling changing a light bulb, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he tells me, he goes, "Oh, Bob Iger stepping down and Bob Chapek's taking over." I'm like thinking in my head, I'm like, you see that from the ceiling? But he had gotten a notification on his phone, and I'm like looking, and I'm like, oh, this is a joke, like I'm like, I thought it was like some kind of like, like one of those sites that like puts out fake information because it's funny.
Like the Onion, yeah.
So yeah, like the Onion. So I thought it was like something like that, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be hilarious. Oh no, it's real. And I think like my first reaction was just resentment towards Bob Chapek, resentment towar's Bob Iger for.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Alex, but Melanie said, can we get a little summary of why there's so much distaste for Bob Chapek? So she just said she's that one person who has no idea. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, Alex, but we should preface this by saying...
Should we all explain? Yeah.
Could we all say it in one word? I think we could.
Let's all give Melanie, each of us, a sentence of, so we keep it short, so we don't just go like, oh my god, I need that, and because we get, we can get excited about talking about Chapek. In a sentence, each of us, we'll start with Matt. Why Chapek is almost unanimously disliked.
Why Chapek is almost unanimously disliked. I feel like you could go back to
That's
that
what
one.
She wants to know, right?
Yeah, I feel like you could go back to that one interview that he did for Galaxy's Edge where he talks about how IPs were like the barrier entry for theme parks. Yeah. I feel like that just sums it up in one brief
That's good
video clip. But again, Undefined Variables said budget cuts. Chapek is known for budget cutting a lot of projects that have been put out by the parks and resorts, stuff like that. That's for me. Jeremy
Alex.
Or Alex, I don't know. Whoever wants to go next.
I'll say.
I'm just going down the line.
So Melanie, I call him Bob Cheapskate.
Oh.
And he has also been known for, this is another quote of his, when asked about the budget cuts to the character departments in the park, he said, our cast members are our characters.
I remember. I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy.
Yeah. Well, I very similar to Matt. I think when
when Chapek said, by the way, I'm not going to call him names. I'm not going to go that low. I think we can fight him with our ideas.
Bob JPEG.
When Chapek when Chapek in the interview when Galaxy's Edge opened in Disneyland said very dismissively, responding to clearly the fan community who critiques IPs, and this is not one sentence. Oh well, okay, that went out the window. About IPs in the parks being the number one priority. He said the IPs that we own are the barrier to entry for the parks, and I personally found that to be an overwhelming lack of knowledge of what the theme parks are, how the theme parks function, the history of the company, the history of the parks. Because in my mind, Disney is the barrier to entry. I mean, they can create anything and people will be interested. And it's budget cuts. It is just a lack. It's also, okay, this is my sentence. I'm so sorry, everybody. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. The fact that he took parks and resorts and merged that into consumer products. And I think that sums up how he views the parks, which we all disagree with.
Yes.
And may I just say that wait, what was I gonna say? Oh darn it, I forgot it, waiting for Jeremy to finish his sentence.
Sorry.
I don't remember now. Oh, I know. Bob Chapek is the reason why me and Matt now have a new word, which is nostalgia bait.
Oh god, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Right.
And he's the reason, because he is known for
Iger too.
No, we never said this before Bob Chapek became in our podcast, like we never. So what nostalgia bait is, which is exactly what Bob Chapek does, is he creates something. Well, he has a new project, right, that comes into one of the parks, and if the project doesn't seem at all very Disney-like, he'll present it to the public using either Walt Disney quotes or images of Walt Disney in some way, shape, or form to make it seem almost as if posthumously Walt Disney approves of this idea, which I really hate that he always presents stuff that way, because that is not, that's just not fair. That's not right. And then people fall for it because they go, oh, Walt Disney was in the presentation. And it's like, no, that's not. Okay, so let's move on.
I think
Alex, yeah,
there will be. We will certainly be talking a lot about Chapek as this conversation continues,
and as his tenure continues.
Oh god, that's such a horrible. That's such a scary thing to say. But Alex, continue.
If his tenure continues, but we'll get more into that.
Can a Disney CEO get impeached?
And it has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with that, but we'll talk more. We'll talk.
I mean, it is kind of weird, right? I mean, the new CEO of the company is orange.
All right. Insults aside,
let's get into the meat. Watching.
Remember.
Yeah, Alex, you can go ahead and again, sorry for interrupting, but you can continue your thought about Steve telling you the news when he was changing the light bulb.
Oh my god, yeah, we still have to do. Oh my god,
I know, right?
First reactions.
But you know what? I'm actually glad Melanie asked, because it was kind of a pleasure to
read because now I'm in the mood. Now I'm in the mood to talk about it. Before I was like, I have to talk about this, and
this makes it so much better. So I thought it was literally a joke, and then when I found out, resentment. I had such resentment for Bob Chapek. I had resentment for Bob Iger for stepping down and allowing this guy to move up, and then and then just resentment for the future of the company, because I don't foresee good things happening nearly as often anymore. I mean, granted, it's not to say that amazing stuff won't be coming to the parks in the future. I'm sure some still will, but I feel like under this guy's leadership, we're gonna have one heck of a time. you know. Yeah, that's my first reaction.
All right, Jeremy, what about you?
Well, I was on Twitter,
as we normally are.
You know, I like to scroll through. I'm only on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter tweeting things about my personal life. I'm only involved in tweeting about Disney history, Disney analysis, Disney thoughts. It's great. So I go on every day and I scroll through to see if anyone has either offered interesting insight about something, or there's a lot of great people who are sort of independent historians. There's former Imagineers, so I always like to go through, see if they've shared something interesting. And also, of course, there's the gossip, which I don't really like. And then there's the news, the news that pops up. And I was on, I'm like, slow day. Played a little Red Dead Redemption, for a few hours. Like, let's check Twitter again. And then it happened. And I was like, it was very strange. I think my first reaction was, I'm pretty sure I knew that when Iger left, that Chapek was going to be the CEO. I think we all, that should not have been a surprise.
Yeah.
What was so surprising about it was when you get to the part where it's, at first I thought it was an announcement, like, oh, okay, Iger's officially announcing that when he retires at the end of 2021, that Chapek,
because he had previously announced that his contract was expiring at the end of 2021.
Yeah, he's retiring at the end of 2021. This is common knowledge. So I thought he was merely announcing, hey, Chapek's going to be the next one, which we all saw coming. But the shocker, the real shocker, was when it said effective immediately. So that's why this is so huge. It still would have been a major news point even if it was just an announcement, but it would not have been such an exciting one because Iger is not the CEO. Has that hit in? It hasn't hit me yet.
No.
That has not sunk in. That is so weird. Chapek is the CEO as of now. That is curious, and I think we're now going to probably transition into a really interesting conversation about why Iger might have made that such a sudden decision to leave right now. So that was my first reaction.
Wow, that you tell long stories, Jeremy.
You know what? So do you.
Oh, burn.
You know what? I do. Sometimes I tell stories that are longer than my life itself. But yeah, I feel like I have a very distinct memory of, when Michael Eisner stepped down and Bob Iger took over. And I remember it was a lot like this. It was kind of like shock. It was kind of like, what? Because, Michael Eisner all through my whole childhood was the CEO of Disney. And then, and then all of a sudden it was somebody else. And even right now, I still don't, it's like Jeremy said, it hasn't sunken in yet that Bob Iger is no longer the CEO of Disney. And I know a lot of people have been worried about, they're like, wait, well, not worried, but they are interested to trying to figure out why it happened so suddenly. Why was there a sudden announcement?
Yeah.
Some people think that, maybe Bob Iger's afraid something will come out about his personal life or something.
Maybe he's running for president. Oh.
So you want to know?
We'll get into that. I don't think he is. There was someone offered a very interesting opinion that was president related, but I don't know if I believe that either. But basically, they were saying how he might, like, Bloomberg might be wanting him to be his VP, but I don't know if I buy that either. I know that would be a weird ticket.
I don't think he's running for president, but I just want to put it out there that if he was, I would vote for him. I think that he would make a better president of the United States than he would, the CEO of Disney at this point.
Well, I don't know. Well, yeah, we can get into our theories of why we think, because there's been a lot of speculation, just because, like we said, the two key words that you should really focus on here, and we could be reading into this way too far. It could just be, I'll get to some quotes here later on from Bob Iger, but we could be reading just way further into this. But the two words that I feel like we should focus on are effective immediately, because like we previously pointed out, Bob Iger had previously announced either last year or a few years ago that he extended his contract until the end of 2021 as CEO, and at the end of 2021 he'd be stepping down. Someone new would take his place, whoever that might have been, whether it was Bob Chapek at the time, whether it was someone else that they were thinking of. But yeah, effective immediately. So Bob Iger is not 100% out of the company as of yet, I believe. The official words that they used were that he was going to be staying on as like a creative sort of consultant kind of guy. I have written down here that he'll remain executive chairman of Disney throughout the end of 2021, taking on a more creative role in the company. So he's still involved in the company until his contract expires at the end of 2021, but it is just very sudden for him to sort of drop, or I guess just sort of sudden for the company to drop this ball on us again on like a Tuesday at like 3 in the afternoon. It was very weird the way they announced it, that he'd be, effective immediately. He'd be stepping down and Chapek would be taking his place.
I have a few theories of my own.
Me too.
I believe that that Bob Iger saw the closure of the Asian parks and saw that the coronavirus thing was going to cost the company a lot of money. It would have just been this huge tarnish in the company. Sure. And I think that this tarnish could not be shined away within the next 24 months. So I think he realized that he didn't want to leave the company right after this huge stain on the company's financial assets and stuff. And I think he just went, what, if I leave now, I leave with a bang. And I think that's what he did. And so I think the reason why they didn't announce it ahead of time is because I think that everybody knows that most Disney fans do not like Bob Chapek. And I think that he knew that if he had previously announced it, a month from now, Bob Chapek will take over. See, I think what would have happened is a bunch of Disney fans would have, like us, gone out on social media and just blasted this. And he didn't want anybody to have the chance to say no, because then maybe the board wouldn't have allowed it. And so, so I think he did this as quickly as he could. That way, there was no chance that he couldn't step down and put Chapek in charge. But I do want to add one more thing, which is my surprise about Chapek becoming CEO. Now, I know that you guys weren't all that surprised, but I was. And the reason why was because there was talk around the Disney news that Chapek's job was in trouble.
Yeah, because even just a few months ago,
we talked about that on here. Yeah.
Yes, we did. Yeah. Thank you. You guys are like the Muppets. Yeah. So, oh yeah, here we turn to talk. But there was So, but we were So everybody thought his job was in trouble because of how much of a cheapskate he is, and so a lot of people are like, wait, so why did he become CEO when everybody was talking about him losing his job? And here's my theory on that. My theory is there was no one else who could be CEO. I mean,
that's a good point.
Yeah, I think that
not right away,
Yeah, not right away because I'm
Yeah,
not
like in
not
2 years maybe, but
Yeah. And the thing is that Bob Iger didn't want to leave the company just drop the mic and walk out. I think he wanted to
Just
make
make
sure
Mickey
that the
Mouse the
company wasn't.
CEO.
Well, I think he would do a better job.
He's too old.
But is too old. But yeah, I think that Bob Iger wanted to leave the company by helping someone, by grooming them into the position of CEO, and without just suddenly hiring a CEO and just going, here's the job, now you handle it. And so when he looked around, and I'm sure for the past 3 years at least, they've been looking for another CEO. I mean, remember Tom Staggs was being groomed for CEO, and then all of a sudden he mysteriously left the company. But yeah, and so I think what happened was time was ticking, and Bob Iger said, there's nobody else who can do this job. It's got to be Chapek. And so I think now he's going to spend the next year or so just helping him ease into his position as CEO and stuff like that. And we can only hope from there that maybe a little bit of what Bob Iger does right will rub off on Bob Chapek. And now I know that a lot of people are probably going to say, well, you've been blasting Bob Iger for ever since you've been on this podcast. And it's true.
So true.
But there was a time when I liked Bob Iger. I liked him for his first 10 years. All the way until 2015, I liked him. And then after that, I think certain things about him just became too, I think his leadership was just more about the commercialization of certain aspects of the company and less about, leading the company into creative new paths. So that's why I blasted him for these past several years. But that being said, I think I still prefer Iger over Chapek. So I just want to clear that up for everybody.
That's like saying that's like saying you prefer chicken parmesan over poop. Great analogy. I would prefer chicken parmesan.
I mean, most people would, Matt, but I mean, we wouldn't expect you to say that.
Bruh. Well, I feel like just very briefly before we move on to Jeremy, we should recap all that Iger has done for this company, because Iger has done a lot to build this company into what it is today. He's acquired in the past year and a half, he acquired 21st Century Fox, as well as Lucasfilm and Marvel Entertainment, and as well, we all know he acquired Pixar when he first started as CEO, and he also launched Disney Plus just last year. And Disney Plus, we talked about a few episodes ago, up I don't even remember the numbers. It has a lot of paid subscribers, Disney Plus does, so it's, raking in a lot of cash for the company. But, Bob Iger, very respected in his first, few years. Jeremy, moving on to you now. What are your thoughts or, I guess, theories as to why Mr. Iger has stepped down so suddenly?
All of this is speculation. We'll never know the full reason why. It's going to be a decade before we know that. I have a hard time believing he's just abandoning ship because of the financial problems that are emerging with the company. I just don't see him being that kind of leader to be like, ooh, I care more about my legacy, so I'm abandoning ship. I honestly think, and maybe this is the optimist in me, and I also think he's a nice person. So I wouldn't. This is also where this is coming from. My take on him as a human being. I think over his tenure with the company, and he's expressed this before. First of all, he fell in love with the park side of things, and I think that I got to give it to him. We're grateful to have Iger because he was willing to put billions of dollars into the parks. Now, if only Chapek wasn't the one running the parks. No, I don't know. But I think he's realized, especially in these final years, that he enjoys more and cares more, which is good for being a CEO of Disney, about the creative operations of Disney. And I think because all of this stuff is dumpster fire is appearing before him, business related stuff, I think he's kind of like, I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
I can't do that. I care more about the creative future of the company. And so I'm going to put Chapek in here, who cares about the business stuff of the company. He'll take care of that. I want to make sure there's a creative legacy for Bob Iger's Disney. And I give him credit for that. Now, I can disagree with him on what he wants the creative legacy to be. What the creative future is for the parks, what the creative future is for the studio. I mean, you talk about that all the time, but I do think he cares. And I think it's because he cares about the creative legacy of the company that he's putting someone who cares about the business legacy of the company in the driver's seat while all of this kind of financial fiasco happens, so he can focus on establishing a creative legacy. And I think that's kind of good of him. Now, we also have to remember that Eisner, before Iger, really established Disney as an empire, really began the campaigns overseas, and set the stage for dominating the global market. And Iger inherited a young empire, so to speak. And he was a good emperor. I mean, part of and Chapek has expressed this in his statement as well. He wants to continue the company's goals of spreading internationally, just like an empire does. Now, we all know what happens to empires when they spread themselves too thin. And but that's another thing. I'm just kind of analyzing the situation. I don't agree with that direction necessarily. So that's my take. I don't think it's an illness. I don't think it's a scandal. I think it's actually like a true, I don't think it's he is jumping ship going bye. I think he's going, I actually don't think I'm the one who's able to deal with this, because I've grown to care more about this, and he's going to make sure that he can focus solely on the creative side of things. And I actually think that's kind of a good thing on his part. So that's my theory.
Okay. Very nice. Well, I agree. Alex, do you have any rebuttals you'd like to say to Mr. Jeremy here?
No, not a rebuttal. I think that is also a very likely scenario. So I agree with Jeremy on that. But I would also like to ask you guys, who do you think will take Bob Chapek's old job?
Yes, that is the next question that I wanted to propose to you guys, since
I did it first.
They fired someone who really should, but
Tony Baxter, right? It's who you're.
Oh, well, that would be great.
Oh,
no,
okay.
That's not who I'm talking about.
I thought that's okay. Well, I feel he would be great.
I don't know who he's talking about. Who did they fire?
Well,
Mickey
she
Mouse?
kind of it was I'm going blank. I'm about to look up her name really fast.
Oh, the woman that they eliminated her job position.
Yes, exactly.
What unfortunate timing, right? it's like if they had just waited another month, she could have been the head of parks and resorts. Wow.
Mm-hmm. It would be outlandish. It would never happen. But it would be so cool if they did put, people are mentioning like senior Imagineers and stuff like that. That would be a great move. That would be a great move. Someone, Avery mentioned Joe Rohde. First of all, I don't think he would take it. The man's an artist.
Yeah.
With the capital A. I don't think he'll be able to run the business side of the parks. But Joe Rohde for head of WDI, that's for sure. I would definitely be in support of that. I don't know who's going to take it over, but someone will.
a lot of people in the comment section are saying that that George Kalogridis should take over. I agree with that one. That was one I was saying ever since I heard the.
I think it's likely. I think it's very likely.
Yeah, because George Kalogridis is like he's like pretty close to that position. But the thing is what makes it unlikely is that George Kalogridis is probably at the bottom of the waiting list. That's the problem. The waiting list might only be like 4 or 5 people, but he's still at the bottom of the waiting list. So I don't know. That's kind of what I'm thinking is probably why it might not happen, but I hope it does. George Kalogridis, I think, has the parks, in his heart, and I think he wants to see them do better. And yeah, so I'd like to see George Kalogridis in that job position.
Yeah. People are saying Josh D'Amaro. He just got promoted to head of Walt Disney World, so I don't feel like that would be necessarily in the cards for him, just because he did just get that promotion.
Yeah,
still settling into that job.
Yeah, you don't move from president of Disneyland Resort straight to head of Parks and Resorts. That's just, you don't have enough experience at that point. And Walt Disney World is like the ultimate experience because you're like in charge of 4 parks, 2 water parks, and 27 resort hotels. So at that point, you're kind of ready to run that part of the company.
Yeah, but before we move on to, I guess, sort of our general thoughts about who should replace Bob Chapek, I do want to run through some quotes from Mr. Bob Iger here, quotes that he put out once this announcement was made. So he said, quote, "With the successful launch of Disney's direct-to-consumer business and the integration of 21st Century Fox well underway, I believe this is the optimal time to transition to a new CEO," Iger said in a statement alongside the announcement. And this is another quote. I thought this was really funny. "I don't want to run the company anymore," Iger said via phone. So yeah, I do feel
I believe him.
Yeah, I do. There was a lot of talk, with social media, all that kind of stuff about the scandal, just because about there possibly being a scandal with him. Maybe someone mentioned like health issues, possibly. I do feel like a lot of those are not necessarily true because, the quotes that he has put out here, I trust Bob Iger when it comes to his announcements of this kind of stuff. So I do feel like he felt like his time was up and he needed someone to replace. And, unfortunately, the only person was Mr. Chapek. But yeah, so unfortunately for us. But yeah, I do want to propose the question, how do you guys feel this will affect the company moving forward, given the discussion we just had on our last topic in regards to budget cuts? Because, Chapek, if there was a king of budget cuts, he'd be wearing a big old crown sitting on a throne up in Burbank. In regards to budget cuts and trying to recoup the money lost from the Chinese parks, how would you guys feel that Bob Chapek taking over would affect all of that? Oh, and yeah, we do have voicemails that we'll get to after this question.
Oh, great.
Okay, so Jeremy, Alex is yawning. Jeremy, what are your thoughts?
So I don't. Here's the thing. I think he was put in the position because he might be better able to handle the business side of all of the dumpster fire that's happening, and that may be so. I think creatively, I'm worried about I would be worried even if Iger was still CEO about the creative future. I don't necessarily agree with the creative endeavors under Iger. But I don't think Chapek at least Iger is like inspired by the creative side of things, and I think Chapek really doesn't know how to do that, and we have empirical evidence of this if you look at his legacy in the parks. Pixar Pier, Galaxy's Edge does not count. That was in the works before him. And so I worry about that. However, there is a side of that narrative where they're saying, well, now that he's CEO, he has other things to worry about. So it's more important who takes over the parks, which is true, I think, as long as he's willing to give the parks Imagineering money.
Mhm.
do projects, then it will matter who is in control of the parks. So some people are saying the fact that he's away from the parks is actually better than if he were still in the parks. And I think that that is kind of true, but I just don't picture him being the leader that Iger was,
Mhm.
someone who really leads the company in a direction.
Yeah.
Because we kind of have come to know him as kind of like an Iger yes man. But you know what? Iger was viewed as an Eisner yes man, and he kind of proved everyone wrong with that. So who knows? You don't know. He might surprise us. I don't think he will, but I don't know. I think he'll be better suited to fix business related problems, but I think that may affect creativity in the company.
Alex.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. So every empire falls. And
Correct.
it's not really a matter of if, it's really more a matter of when and how
When.
hard.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for instance, the Roman Empire fell and now it's completely gone. The British Empire fell, but it's still around. So, the thing that the thing that I'm going to try to say here is that I think we're going to see the downturn of the Disney Empire. I know a lot of people think that Disney Empire will be super popular for like 100 more years, but it's a company. They don't live on geologic time. They live on the time. They live on social time. They're constantly in need of evolving to maintain their popularity with people. And if you don't keep up with people nowadays, you're going to fall behind. And so I think that we're going to be seeing the fall of Disney pretty soon, in a matter of just a couple of years, maybe even a decade. And it might just be a slow fizzling out because they've got a lot of things that will keep them popular for a long time, but it'll start to dwindle. And so that's what I think is going to happen. Let me see. I'm trying to gather my thoughts together into a cohesive sentence. So I think that what could make this work, what could make Bob Chapek as CEO work, is if he had his own Michael Eisner, next to him. So, we all know that Frank Wells did a really good job as being president of the company. But Frank Wells didn't have that creativity. Frank Wells was very much the business aspect. And, thankfully, Michael Eisner had that creative thing, that creative spark in him. I think Bob Chapek doesn't have that much creativity. He's got more of a business aspect and frugality to him. Super frugality. I thought that was funny. Anyway, and thank you. And but I think that he needs a Michael Eisner at his side, someone who will who will be super creative and say, well, Bob, we got to do this next and we got to do that next. And for now, that would be Bob Iger for the next 22 months. But after that, who knows? And if there will even be, because look at Bob Iger, he's not as business, oriented as much as he is creative oriented. Then again, he does a really good job. You know what? Just scratch that last part out. But I think what would make this, if he had someone at his side that was super creative and knew where to lead the company in terms of creativity. Bob Chapek, he can keep it running, but he's not the fuel to this car.
Yeah, very wise words from Mr. Alex here. Let's go ahead and get to a voicemail from Mr. T. Will himself. So let's go ahead and see what T. Will has to say about all this.
Bob Chapek becoming the CEO is obviously very sudden, caught everybody off guard, not only by how quick the information was, but by who became the successor. Ultimately, I have a sneaking suspicion that Chapek is not supposed to be the actual person, but he's supposed to be instead the fall guy. In case, with, you know, the coronavirus becoming the pandemic, you know, becoming the sensationalized pandemic of the hour, and, you know, and it's going to lead to poor numbers for the company for the time being. So Iger immediately saying no and stepping down as soon as possible. You get that feeling like, is Chapek going to just be there for a little bit and then get kicked out by a true successor? Now, whether or not that's actually the case, we don't, you know, we'll have to wait and see. In terms of Chapek becoming the CEO and how that's going to affect the parks, how it's going to affect the company altogether, I feel like he's just going to be so nothing that either he's not going to really lead anything, or ultimately things stagnate horribly under him. That pretty much nothing interesting or creative happens from any side, or, you know, that's just my prediction, because under the parks it's been even more stagnant, you know, with the budget cuts and implementing more weaker projects, as I would say Marvel is, at least. But, you know, who knows?
Very lovely voicemail. Thank you, Mr. T. Will, for leaving that. And again, you guys, 575-386-5814 if you're interested in voicing your thoughts about Mr. Bob Chapek becoming the CEO. Do you guys have anything you'd like to say to Mr. T. Will's voicemail?
Yeah, I think what Chapek has made clear in one of his statements is, I think his priority as CEO is going to be a strong focus on international expansion. So I think we're going to see expansion fast, which is a warning sign. If we're doing this empire analogy, that's a major warning sign. Once empires start going like, look at us, I mean, we can take over anything. Then they start going here, they start going there. They spread themselves out too thin, and then they economically explode or collapse. So I'm nervous about that, especially if that's his number one priority is just international expansion, even more so. Then I'm worried that creative endeavors here, like the studio and the parks, are just there's definitely gonna be creative stagnation, which there's already been signs of that for the past 6-7 years.
Yeah.
So that, I think the creative stagnation is going to continue, and something we've talked about a lot, or I talk about a lot on here when I come on, is how that is just not a sustainable model moving forward. And I think that contributes to something Alex is saying is, you know, how do you stay relevant with the public if you creatively stagnate and then you fall eventually? So I'm worried if he's just focused on international expansion, that's not what you should focus on leading a creative enterprise like Disney.
Yeah, Mr. Alex, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I'm worried about the Disney empire under Bob Stagnate.
Bob Stagnate? That's a good one.
Bob Cheapskate, Bob Stagnate.
Poor Bob. We clown on him a lot, but, you know, never met the guy personally. Don't know if he's nice. Don't know if he's mean. He could be rude. The worst man for all we know. Or he could be the sweetest man in the world.
You know, I feel like he would be a pleasant person to talk to.
Sure.
You know, I really do believe that. I think this nice guy, like you walk up to him, he's like, "Hi, how are you? I'm Bob." You know, just like that too. I'm Bob. Hey there, hi there, ho there, Bob. But yeah, so yeah, but I just don't agree with the way he sees the company. He sees it as this asset, this pile of money that he's got to protect. instead of this creative and
Yeah, yes and
beautiful
no,
thing.
yes and no. Yeah, I just think he views it as a he views it as what it's become. That's not his
Sure.
fault. I mean, he views it for what it's become, which is a multinational corporate conglomerate, which basically run that like an empire.
Mhm.
You know, so he views it that way, and I, you know, which is what it is. I mean, I don't know how we fix that. I don't know, but
Is it even
he's just a
possible?
perfect example of, now we have a CEO who is born from that company
Yes. That's a good way.
philosophy.
That's a good way of putting that. And I guess we should also kind of know, us Disney fans do have a very, I guess, negative connotation around Mr. Bob Chapek from all the budget cuts he's been making. But I'm sure if you look at it from the business side, the shareholders, I'm sure, love Mr. Chapek because of all the money he's been saving the company. You know, with the budget cuts
it was a
hate so much.
unanimous vote.
Mhm.
So the board at least must have been advocating for him.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe the board was just really trying to get Bob Iger out of it. Because
I don't know.
if you read the article, Bob said that when he went in there to announce that he wanted to step down, the board was actually going to talk to him about that too. So they both had the idea at the exact same time.
Isn't that something?
So?
Wow.
I mean, you got to wonder, after all the good Bob Iger's done, why would the board want to tell him the same thing? Like, hey, maybe you should step down.
I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier. I think over the past few years, he's become more, he's paid more attention to the creative, managing the creativity in the company, that the board's going, okay, Bob, but like, no.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Iger, even though I disagree with creative decisions under him, I think he developed eventually a care for the creative side of things, and I think it's good that he understood that is what keeps the company going.
Sure.
Even though I don't think the creative endeavors he's been advocating for and trying to move forward with are sustainable creative models, he still understands that is the bedrock of the company, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think the board was going, no, that's not how you run a major corporation. So you should step down. But it is how you run Disney, whether you're making the right creative decisions or not. And I think I can give Iger the credit for at least understanding that on a philosophical level. I don't know why he thought making remakes and was a, anyway, I don't need to, I can disagree with his creative endeavors, but at least he understood that you have to run the company creatively.
Yeah, no, I feel like I agree. Well, I guess before we end this show, you guys, I feel like we should hold like a eulogy for Mr. Bob Iger. I feel like it's necessary. I have here funeral music, piano, and viola. So I'm going to play this in the background. We can all, just go around the room, say our favorite memories of Mr. Bob Iger. I'll go ahead and start us off. So, guys, I went to Disneyland a few years ago. I fell down and scraped my knee pretty badly. And you know who came out and helped me? It was Iger himself. Oh, you guys can hear the music. That's awkward. I'll restart it.
Yeah, no. Start it over.
There it is. All right. Went to Disneyland a few years ago. Fell down. There's blood everywhere, you guys. I scraped my knee. I was crying my eyes out. And you know who came up to me? Bob Iger, as he pulled off the head of Mickey Mouse that he was wearing. That sounded really morbid to say just like that. As he pulled off the head of Mickey Mouse. And he said...
And then noticed me. No.
And he said, Matthew, it's okay. I'm here for you. And he gave me a free Max Pass for the day. Jeremy, what about you?
Well, I'm gonna do something for real.
Okay.
Something we didn't mention is that This feels so disconnected now with the music. My memory of Iger, and I was in the office with him, and he said, "I am going to buy Pixar," and I said, "Iger, that is the best decision you could make." Because people already affiliate Pixar with Disney. This will be the best acquisition. But I'm begging you, stop there. Don't buy anymore. He didn't listen to the last part, but he did listen to the first part. And that was the best acquisition that he did for the company. So I'll remember that forever.
Wise words, Jeremy. And Alex?
Matt, I just hope you know that since we started this eulogy, we lost 10 viewers.
Oh my god! No! Oh my god, it's true!
Yes! Yes!
Well, either way. Either way, Alex, it's your turn.
Well, unlike you guys, I'm not going to tell some fake weird story.
But mine was like historical fiction.
That's true.
No,
mine was just straight fiction.
Fictional fiction.
He did no.
I just want to say that I thought there was a time when I really loved Bob Iger as the company president, and I thought he was so cool, and all the ideas that he had for the company and all the things he was doing for the company was really amazing. And even in the recent years, I thought his acquisition of Lucasfilm was awesome. The implementation, however, was not. And I thought that his ideas, such as creating the Disney Plus, was amazing ideas. And so, I'm really gonna miss Bob Iger in that sense. I'm really gonna miss all of this,
I'm not laughing at you. It's with the music. It just makes it all funny.
I'm gonna miss all the funny jokes Bob used to tell in the office. He was quite the prankster, putting whoopee cushions under George.
We lost
George
2 more viewers. Maybe we should turn the music off.
Well, in all seriousness, I'll turn it down a bit. In all seriousness, it's been a pleasure having Mr. Bob Iger as CEO for the Walt Disney Company, however long it's been since he started. 15 years, I think, at least.
15 years.
So, if we can just end this on a big effing chat for Mr. Bob Iger, everybody, I would appreciate that.
That's appropriate.
And yeah, we're very, I guess, excited, so a different word to use. We're very excited for what the future of the company holds under Mr. Bob Chapek. And yeah, we will keep you guys updated on whether or not this story, fertilizes anymore. I don't think that's the right word to use. Fertilizes.
I think it works.
All right, fertilizes anymore. Anyways, on that note, thank you all for coming to today's episode of Matterhorn Mondays. We appreciated all the people who came out live, and as well, Alex's channel will be down in the description, as well as his Twitter, and Jeremy's Twitter will be down there as well. And we're excited to hear everyone's thoughts on all the topics we discussed today, whether it be Bob Chapek replacing Mr. Bob Iger as CEO, whether it be Tokyo Disneyland closing until March 15th and how that might impact the future of the US parks. As well, you guys, the Jungle Cruise boat sunk at the Magic Kingdom. I want to know what you guys think about that, as well as Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway preview. Runaway Railway.
What is with that speech impediment?
It's such a hard phrase to say. Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, which opens on Wednesday, March 4th, this week, you guys. So if you happen to be visiting Walt Disney World, if you happen to catch a fast pass for that, let us know your thoughts on the ride. And
I'd also like to tell the viewers, you're welcome, you guys. You're welcome that you didn't have to see a Puckermint ad in the middle of this whole episode.
I completely forgot about that. Well, you know what that means. Sponsor break. Just kidding. You guys know the drill. Puckermint, use code MMDays for 15% off your order. Link in the description below, as well as theliveplace.com. Great Disney family-friendly live streams. I completely forgot about that. We were so engrossed in the conversation that...
I was going to ask. I was going, we're going into the topics. Like, shouldn't you do...
I mean,
I wasn't going to say anything.
It flowed nice.
I thought you had this under control. I thought you've like finally understood how to do this podcast.
I'm learning as I go, just like Chapek will be doing.
Stay tuned, everyone. We might not see Jeremy again on this podcast.
I'll be here. I'll probably be here next week.
Jeremy, do you want to be on the show next week with us?
Yes, I would love to. Thank you for asking.
Next week, you guys, episode 126. Jeremy will be back, confirmed.
Talking about the Spaceship Earth concept art,
yes,
which we forgot to talk about today.
Big news that
episode 126. Jeremy has coronavirus.
Hey,
wouldn't that be something? Anyways, again, thank you all for coming out to today's episode, and as always, have a great, big, beautiful tomorrow.